Hello and welcome to Inside Influence, the show where we talk to top B2B marketing insiders about what's working and what's not inside the world of influencer marketing. I'm your host, Lee Odden, CEO and co-founder of TopRank Marketing, and today we're talking with none other than Ursula Ringham, head of global influencer marketing at SAP, also an author and a fellow fitness enthusiast. Welcome, Ursula.
What an intro. Thank you, Lee. Great to be here.
So, of course, most people in the marketing world probably know you, but for those that don't, could you share a little bit about your work with SAP?
Sure, no problem. So I work at SAP. If people don't know what that is, SAP is one of the largest enterprise software companies. We like to say that 77% of all world revenue transactions go through an SAP ERP system. And so it's one of those things that we're probably the biggest company in the world that you use every day, but you don't know anything about it. So what I do is I manage our global influencer marketing program. So what we do is we collaborate with trusted voices that influence buyer decisions. And what we like to do is collaborate with them to tell the story of how SAP makes the world run better and improve people's lives.
Fantastic. What a great job.
Yeah, no, it's pretty fun. I like it.
So, as you know, we published the first B2B influencer marketing report called the 2020 State of B2B Influencer Marketing research report recently that you contributed to. And your contribution on influencer marketing operations, I think, was really important because a lot of people don't really think about all the behind the scenes stuff that goes into a really effective program. And I'm wondering if you could share with us, what are some of the key components of influencer marketing operations that marketers need to know about?
Yeah, the operations part is so important. And I think when you're just starting with an influencer program, you're just like, okay, where do I begin? I know it's people, I need to research. They have a lot of social following, but that's the wrong approach. You have to start with your strategy, but then you need some tools to help you. So there are different influencer relationship management tools that you can use, such as like Analytica or Tracker. And there's also some other little ones. The ones I mentioned are more kind of like for the enterprise. But these are tools that are going to help you because when we work with teams, the very first thing we do is we have them go fill out a form. We've created an online form, and it's going to ask them, first of all, what's the demographics? What's the audience? What does success look like? And then also, what's that persona? So who's that person? Who is it that you want to help tell that story with you? And that's really, really important. So when then you go back and you use these tools, these influencer relationship management tools, you can go in and plug all that data in. It's going to go surf the whole web, bring everything back, and it's going to populate a report for you so you can look at who are these influencers. So the key thing is it saves you time, and then you can manage all your projects in there. So it makes it very, very easy, and it helps you.
Great. And I suppose along with software, process comes into play and the whole operations thing too, right? As far as like best practices or...
Oh my gosh, there's so many different best practices. But the one thing that I always tell my team is even if the tool brings up all these people, you need to read, watch, and listen to every single asset that these influencers has come up with, right? So that's a best practice number one, absolutely. You can't just look and go, wow, this person meets the criteria on paper of what this team wanted, right? Yes, they wanted them to be located in North America. Maybe they're a podcaster, maybe they had 50,000 followers, but you really have to go and see what their personality is like, how they present themselves. And of course, in now our digital world, right, that we're all digital with video, you're gonna have to see how they perform. If you want them to be a host, right? How do they have anything that they're showing? So that's kind of the biggest process that I have is you have to watch, read, and listen to everything out there.
Yeah, it's that you're right. It's not a lot of people stop at identify. You also have to qualify and validate them. So
absolutely,
great advice.
Absolutely.
In our research, we found that twice as many of the most successful influencer marketers are using that software to identify influencers. Twice as many as the least successful, right? So twice as many of the marketers who are using software are very successful, self-identified, compared to those that are least successful. So why is it that influencer marketing is so important? I mean, you just described how you can use it to identify influencers. What do you think should marketers expect from that software? What should it do for them?
It's to help them. It's to help them organize, managed because the software depends on what you want to do. You can have all your communications through the software. So what you can do is you can write a message and it's going to go through the software. It's going to ping that influencer, come back. So you have a record of everything. Who wants to go through their inbox looking through all this information? So it keeps a record of it. And there's so many things you can do with the software. I mean, you can have reports right there. So it's that like one-stop shop that you go to that has everything about your influencers in there. It's like a CRM, right? And who can work without a CRM when you're in sales, right? You need to have that information at your fingertips. So that's the number one thing that using software can help you with your influencer marketing program.
Super, super. Yeah, I mean, you can't scale with a spreadsheet when it comes to influencers. So certainly software plays a pretty important role.
It does.
So the report, the State of B2B Influencer Marketing Report, does include a case study featuring your work with SAP in the form of a podcast called Tech Unknown. And I think personally, creating a single resource to serve as a platform for multiple internal customers, if you will, and multiple industries or external audiences is really impressive. So I'm kind of curious, what role did influencers play in the podcast?
Absolutely. So we created this podcast, Tech Unknown, and we just finished our second series. So the first series, it was basically influencer talking to influencer. It was like live. But what we wanted to do is create something different the next season. And so we took, This American Life? Great podcast out there. And so what it is, you have a host, and then the host is going to tell a story. And that's the most important thing when you look at influencer marketing. What is the story you're going to tell? It's not just like, let's do this campaign. What is the overall story? So the same thing with the podcast. It's a series. So what we did was we identified an influencer who would be our host. So Tamara McCleary, shout out to you. She's a great thought leader, influencer. She was our host. And the reason we chose her is she's energetic. She, in her voice, how she introduces things, it's great. The audience can relate to her. And so she was the host, and she would bring out the topic of data. And we looked at all different lines of business and how data affects, different businesses out there. So what we do is then we bring in other influencers to give their perspective as like thought leaders on that topic. So if it's talking about HR data, we bring in an HR expert. And then we might have a customer involved in it or an executive who could talk about the customer. And so the whole thing was around thought leadership. And the influencers play a critical role because they validate the story. They are that third-party validation that what SAP is talking about is something that is a challenge in the industry. And the hope is then people will realize, oh, SAP has a solution to my challenges. Let me go check that out. And so that's why the podcast was so important with our influencers. And I'll have to tell you one thing that is absolutely incredible. We would create a summary blog about the podcast, and we have this on one of our web properties. And the gal who manages this thought leadership area of SAP.com, she knows SEO really, really well. And one of our blogs on just the future of data. If you typed in Google future of data, out of all of the SERP results, right, 1.5 billion SERP results, ours came up number one. And it's a combination of working with the influencer who has this social media presence. Tamara's out there and she's promoting this blog that she wrote that's a summary. She's promoting the series. We're getting the word out there, keywords, and it all comes into play. It's all full circle, right? So it's a podcast, it's a blog, it's the influencers. It's all working together to create this awareness that then people are going to pay attention and realize that SAP has a solution to their business needs.
Wow, sounds like a great approach for sure. Yeah. Especially when you're including your executives there too, because that's the voice of the company, the brand, but that validation from third parties or industry experts obviously makes a big difference, especially today as people want to hear from subject matter experts, maybe a little more than people from a brand.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I agree with that.
So our research found that only half of B2B marketers include a plan for influencer activation in their strategy, and 41% they're not even using any technology at all. I guess they're still just using spreadsheets. What advice could you share with marketers that are interested in influencer marketing but unable to fully commit?
That's a tough one because I always say to people, you have to start out small. So just commit to something, right? And, even if you have to start out with that spreadsheet, but you have to investigate it, watch, obviously, podcasts, these videos Find out what industry, experts on B2B marketing are doing. That's what I did. I just went out and kind of looked at what other people are doing. I looked from the B2C perspective because there wasn't at the time a lot of B2B. And I think, SAP, we're kind of one of the forerunners in B2B influencer marketing. And so look at what other companies are doing. You can always recycle things. You can always make them better. And that's kind of my approach, is like, my advice is start off small. So maybe it's like you pick one or two influencers in your line of business and maybe do a blog series, right? Very easy to do, get their opinions, get it out there, and then slowly scale it. Maybe then you add video, maybe a podcast. But the key thing, and I'll emphasize this again, what is the story that you want to tell? You have to be able to tell that story and then integrate the influencers into that story.
Oh, that's great advice. Now, sometimes B2B brands don't have the resources or expertise to implement a program, right? I mean, people are busy, marketing departments are spread thin. Our research actually found that 60% of marketers say they don't have the right skills or knowledge to execute. So the data kind of supports that theory. What are some things that brands can do, B2B marketers can do or expect if they're going to engage an outside resource like a consultant or an agency?
Well, the good thing, first of all, you need to have some kind of budget. You need to have something if you're going to engage with an outside agency. But the key thing is then if you do not have experience, then find an agency that does. There are very few of them, hint, hint, that are really good. And what happens is they bring their breadth of experience, their knowledge, their expertise. And also the great thing is they've already worked with a lot of these influencers that you probably are not even aware of, and they can bring them into your campaigns. And I mean this in a general sense that, they have a wide net out there. And so depending on who you want to work with, they're not going to say, work with these 2 people. They'll give you, here's like 10 people. You get to select it. You get to choose it, but at least they have those relationships. So I'd say that working with an outside agency, it's helpful because they have the relationships, they have the expertise, and they have the knowledge that can help you get up and running. So you can hit the ground running with an influencer program. And to be honest, depending on what you need to do, it's not a lot of money just to get out the door, show your executives the power of what can happen, and then you'll get more money from that executive to go to the next step and scale your program.
Absolutely. There's a lot of enthusiasm around, there's been an increase in enthusiasm around influencer marketing in general, and even in B2B in the last year or two. But now we've got this current situation that we're in. Well, there's many situations, aren't there? But specifically with the pandemic, and I guess other business, or environmental, social, political uncertainties that are happening right now. Some might say we should pause our marketing activities. We should pause something like influencer marketing, or maybe working with influencers during a time of uncertainty is actually a good thing. What's your opinion?
So I think it depends on, getting back to B2B and B2C, right? It's very, very different in the B2B space. I think that, during the beginning part of the pandemic, I think like myself, like many people were like, what the hell am I doing? There's so much tragedy happening. Who cares about this, right? But here's the thing. From my perspective with SAP, I really sat down and I had kind of this moment where I realized because SAP exists, people can get the medications they need. People can get the supplies they need because our company helps the world run their businesses, seriously. And so like supply chain became kind of this phrase that people finally started to understand because they couldn't get their toilet paper. They're like, what's happening? What's going on? It's the supply chain. And so I looked at it as like, you know what, we need to keep going in marketing, but be thoughtful, right, of the situation. And what SAP likes to do is we like to promote what our customers are doing, right? So our customers had amazing, successes, and I don't want to say successes, but amazing stories of helping people during the pandemic, and it happened to be part of their business. And so we like to showcase those, situations and stories because then maybe it inspires other people and other companies to say, wow, we could do that too. I didn't realize that. And our software is very powerful and it does help people. And so for me, working with influencers, it's a necessity because the world keeps on marching. Time keeps on marching on, and companies need our technology to help them. And the interesting thing that I found is everyone at the beginning of the year had their plans laid out for the whole year, right? These are just, salespeople, what they're going to do with digital transformation. And that got thrown out the door. And the one thing that we've seen from the research is now companies are like, maybe in 2020, they weren't going to digitize, they weren't going to, go to the cloud. Now they're like, oh my gosh, we've got to do this because it's going to make their business more profitable, better, but also make it easier for what they need to get done because people are remote, right? Maybe they now need to digitize instead. And so I think influencers are in the B2B space a natural part of the equation to keep moving forward with marketing because we need those topic experts. We need those digital hosts. We need people that can help SAP tell that story. And in this digital age, it's an imperative.
Absolutely. Wow, that very well said. Very well said. Now, there's a lot of optimism around influencers, but sometimes there can be challenges. What do you think marketers should watch out for when they're working with B2B influencers or just thinking about B2B influencer marketing?
That's a really good question. It actually came up the other day. So the one thing you do have to watch out for, be cognizant of, is sometimes these influencers are thought leaders that maybe they were practitioners at some point and went out on their own. But sometimes there are thought leaders that still work a 9-to-5 job that are like a CEO of a company. And you have to be cognizant of that because they might not want to be part of your program because one, they probably don't have enough time, but then two, is there a conflict of interest? Not that they maybe sell the same product, but it's like, you want to have someone that's kind of maybe has their own side hustle and they're okay with that and their company's okay with that. Because the last thing you need to do is partner with an influencer. You got everything lined up. And then they're like, oh, by the way, my parent company won't allow me to do that. So that's one of those, like, you have to check the boxes when you work with influencers that you could find someone and go, oh, this guy's great. They're awesome. And I'm like, did you see they work at Google? And, there might be some competition there. And, oh yeah, I didn't realize that. And it's the same thing, like for me, am I going to be an influencer for another company? Probably not, because I'm at SAP, I'm busy enough. And also, do you want someone from SAP being your influencer, right? It depends on the situation, but I don't know if that makes sense, but
yeah,
I'd say like, just be cognizant of where people actually work. And that's going to determine, if you want to collaborate with them or not.
Yeah, that makes sense. Just like values alignment and like you were saying before, check out what they publish to make sure it's the nature of what you want to be connected to, and
exactly.
the cadence and all that, and the quality. Yep.
The quality. Yeah.
Yeah. So who are some B2B tech influencers that really stand out today? And are there any rising stars you would like to mention also?
Oh my gosh, there are several, and I'd say like one of the first people that comes to mind is Sally Eves. She's someone that she's been on the scene for quite some time. But the thing with Sally is, first of all, Sally, I don't know where you get that energy. She is 24/7, go, go, go. She's doing so many things. She has a background being a CTO, but then she has a side of her that, with education, with children, and then the environment, and how technology is influencing society. And she's kind of like the whole package, and she's really good and knowledgeable and very charismatic. And so, we'd love to do some work with her because she's fantastic. She also, has a British accent, which makes that fun for us Americans. We're jealous of that. But she's one of the top ones that I would recommend that you would check out. Just, I love following her stories, on Twitter and whatnot. And so definitely check her out.
Okay, super. So this has been great. It's gone by so fast. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you, and you've really shared some interesting insights. It's great to look, behind the curtain, as it were, to get some of the inside details. Where can people connect with you online?
Very easily, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. I don't really connect personally there. Instagram, it's just my name, Ursula Ringham. So Ursula Ringham, Ringham. Very unusual name. I've never met another Ursula Ringham. So if you look me up, you could probably find me.
Fantastic. Thanks, Ursula. So be sure to catch Ursula and I October 14th, because we are going to be co-presenting on B2B Influencer Marketing Unleashed at the Content Marketing World Conference, which is now in its 10th year. I'm not sure if I shared that with you, Ursula, but this is I've spoken at Content Marketing World 10 years in a row. And in that 10th year,
wow,
we are partners. So that's going to be pretty exciting.
That's great.
So until then, be sure to stay tuned to toprankblog.com for more episodes of Inside Influence.